nature of tech is that it gives rewards to the top people, both the top creators and also the owners of the platforms.
Who actually ends up winning in the game of capitalism is actually based on ownership. You're 100% true. And I think there's a lot of things broken with the game of capitalism, but I also think that new jobs also are created. Products have a timeline. Problems are timeless. Microsoft is no longer a product company. It's a distribution company. It's no longer about Windows.
And it's not distribution in the sense of fiber optics, but it's in relationships, software installs, and the enterprise clients that they have, which traditionally takes so long to land. But once you do, they're going to be around for a while.
If you, as a founder, do want to be the CEO, then you're going to have to recognize this is no longer about product. This is about process and people. Most successful COOs and presidents, oftentimes they are homegrown. And if you're able to invest in them and level them up over time, you're going to end up creating incredible individuals.
Hey, it's Andrew here, and welcome to the e-commerce Fuel podcast, a show dedicated to helping 7- and 8-figure brand owners build incredible businesses and amazing lives. And today, joined by someone, who crossed paths over a decade ago, first in Germany. We were both at a conference speaking, and that's Ayman Al-Abdullah. He is, or was, the CEO of AppSumo, where they took that business, or he took that business specifically from $3 million to $70 million in sales. Learned a tremendous amount along the way. I made a ton of mistakes, of course, as you'd imagine. And Ayman's such a smart guy with an impressive track record. And we geek out on, of course, that whole journey, his lessons in leadership, lessons for developing internal talent, how to hire a legitimate COO. And we also kind of go off topic a little bit too. We talk about AI, not AI in the traditional sense, but some contrarian takes on AI, and dive also into his fitness routine, his health routine and fitness routine that he has spent a decade dialing in. And we kind of, riff on how to put together a great routine in your own life that balances work and fitness and things like that. Anyway, really enjoyable discussion. Always impressed with Ayman, and it was so fun to catch up with him. So hope you enjoy this one right after this. Dude, you have you got your own TV show over there.
Oh, I appreciate that, man. I'm actually in New York, and I reached out to a friend, and I was like, hey, I'm looking to record a podcast. And he's like, oh, you have to swing by this place called WTF Studios, and it's absolutely phenomenal. They've got 9 cameras in front of me, full audio connection. We've got Tiana on the 1s and 2s back there, just running production. So, but you've got a great setup at home as well. I mean, that's. I feel like you've got a producer on your end as well.
I appreciate that. This is the side room. You're being too kind though. It's I appreciate it, but man, I mean, you look like Oprah Winfrey is ready to pop out the side and start giving cars away.
Well, I wish I could. I wish I could take credit. I wish I could say this is my side room, but this is. I'm currently on a 15th floor and I believe we're in Manhattan right now. So this is definitely not my side room.
Nice, man. Well, you look even better than always.
Appreciate that.
What are you doing in New York?
I'm actually here for an event. So got invited sort of last minute. I know you and I have been kind of going back and forth. I actually just came back from Andrew Wilkinson's event when you and I were supposed to originally do the podcast, and it was just a whirlwind. And so I was like, I did not want to reschedule now that I'm here for this other event. So I'm like, you know what? Let me just book some studio space and let's make it happen.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Tell me about Andrew's event. I for people who aren't familiar with him, he owns the company. I think it's called Tiny. He's got such an interesting story. He's bought a bunch of online businesses, put them together. I think they went public a while back.
That's right.
Just a really interesting entrepreneur. What was his event about and like?
I mean, really good marketing because he calls it the 100 most interesting people he knows conference. So it's like IP2, interesting people conference. And so he basically invites 100 people out to Victoria, Canada. And it was amazing. I loved it. It was probably one of the densest quality of talent that I've seen in a long time at these type of events. So it was a really, really fun event. And it was sort of loosely structured around some talks, but for the most part, it was mostly just bring some interesting people together and just having some good conversations.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Obviously honoring confidentiality among private discussions, any cool ideas or things you learned or fun takeaways from an event with that many interesting people?
Yeah, I mean, obviously there was a lot of friend DA stuff that was going on in that regard, but in terms of stuff that I maybe can speak about, so that there's number one, just the amount of old types of companies that are now just absolutely exploding as a result of leveraging AI. So this old school media agency immediately has generated $1 million in monthly revenue as a result of leveraging AI to basically help enterprise companies step into the next generation. That was really interesting. Number two, the amount of people that are leaving X, Twitter, whatever, for LinkedIn. LinkedIn is absolutely exploding in terms of content creation. So like all of these people that are just having huge audiences on Twitter, getting frustrated with the lack of reach. And so they've now pivoted to LinkedIn. That was super interesting. But honestly, the most interesting was the amount of people just talking about health. And so the supplement stack, the health stack, it was definitely like a slightly older crowd as we're approaching the next phase of our entrepreneurship. And so the amount of people talking about health was just super interesting. And I think that the longevity space is really going to just take off in a whole new way amongst our community.
Interesting. Much talk about Brian Johnson and
that's right.
All the crazy stuff he's doing. Any of the protocols that stood out that people, and I know you're really into health, something you take seriously. Apart from the basics, eating well, clean diet, exercise, sleep, that's 80% of it gets talked about a lot. I think people understand that. Anything that you're doing that you're excited about, or do you see other people doing on top of that that's like that little extra edge?
For the most part, everyone takes the multivitamin, they take the basics, but I was shocked at just the amount of micronutrients that has a significant impact on my daily health. As an example, I started taking a vitamin B complex from Thorne, and I had a little bit of B6, a little B12. Andrew, my energy has absolutely skyrocketed as a result of just taking that one extra little boost of vitamins. Like that's been massive. I've double dosed my omegas. And so that's just made a huge impact in terms of my recovery, in terms of feeling just sharper on a daily basis. But one of the biggest things that I've started taking was this thing called beta glucan. I haven't had a sick day in 3 years as a result of taking beta. It's like a mushroom extract. And it's really famous amongst the mom community because, obviously when you have a kid coming in and out of daycare, just portals for getting sick. And so, constantly. So mom groups are really big into this beta glucan. I started taking it through Better Way Health. And I haven't had a sick day in three years. And
what's it called again?
Beta glucan. BETA. It's like a mushroom extract. I get it through Better Way Health. And it's been phenomenal.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Thank you. I don't know if you know Mike from Momentum Shake. He's in Austin. I'm guessing you probably know him. He was just on earlier today. We recorded an episode and we're talking about all the stuff he's put into his to Momentum to make it really high quality, something that can help you live longer. But that's really cool. On the front, going back to Andrew's event, on the AI front, have you had AI bots call you, like the AI telemarketers call you yet?
No. I don't have telemarketers breaking through anyway. I'm on Do Not Disturb all the time.
I rarely pick up the phone unless I know the number. But the other day, one came through and I picked it up for whatever reason. And it took me, I didn't know it was an AI agent until the AI agent outed themselves saying hey, this is an AI agent.
No way.
Because they started, it was good. They went on and they start talking. They're like, hey, Andrew, you there? A little bit back and forth. And they're like, hey, I'm selling, I think it went something along the lines of, hey, would you be interested in learning about how to use AI agents to increase your sales and lower your costs? And I'm like, wow. Eyes are glazing over. And it was the classic, hey, this is, was made with AI. It was pretty impressive. And so of course impressive. I started asking some more in-depth questions of this agent, and it kind of started falling apart once I knew the game. But all that to say, what is it that you saw people were speaking of in terms of tools, tactics at the Andrew Wilkinson event for AI that was most helpful? Because there's so much noise out there. There's a lot of things that work really well. There's a lot of things that don't work well that piggyback off of the underlying models. But not that many amazing groundbreaking tools. But I still feel like 80% of the value is in Claude or ChatGPT. Anything that you heard about that you were super excited about?
Not anything in terms of specific tools, but definitely use cases. Like one of the companies, they had 1,000-person phone center, like a call center, and they started implementing AI in terms of answering the customer support, similar to like using the voice. And the amount of the number one, the call times went down and the satisfaction of the calls went up. And so they were literally able to replace 1,000-person call center using AI in regards to getting higher quality results for their customers, which is obviously super sad for the 1,000 people that were, handling the call center. But to me, it's kind of making me wonder what is the next step, because I don't know if you know this, but America went through a 40-year recession when the Ford Model T came out, because the number one industry at the time was actually horses. Like, there was so many horse farmers out there. You could imagine everyone owned horses. There was an entire industry around bridles and training and food. And we went through a 40-year recession in regards to that. But you know who actually ended up coming out on top were the saddle makers that pivoted to making leather seats, where the individuals that were like, well, now I'm going to, instead of worrying about how do I help you train a horse, I'm going to learn about car mechanics and helping improve and maintaining your car. And there's this similar element that's happening right now where I 100% know a lot of industries are going to get decimated. But as you can look, I'm literally in New York now, stuck in traffic. The amount of vehicles that are on the road right now, I guarantee you, vastly increases the amount of cars that were probably here 100 years ago, or the amount of horses that were here 100 years ago. And so the industry that has come out of this new technology is significantly higher than it was 100 years ago. And by the way, Andrew, I don't know if you know this, the horse industry today is bigger than it was in the 1900s. It just pivoted from being an everyday use to now a luxury good. And so now you've got the Kentucky Derby, you've got $1 million horses, and the industry itself is bigger. It's back and bigger than it ever was, but it just required it to go through an evolution. And so I think something very similar is going to happen with call centers, with writing, with art, with so many industries that are going to get derailed by AI. But I think that for those that can stay on top of the wave and recognize like what's going to come next, I think there's going to be something even more magical that happens on the other end of it.
Yeah, I hope so. That's always the argument, right? Like Industrial Revolution, the Luddites, you don't want to be that person who's just, protesting progress. I think it's an amazing time to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be an amazing time to be an entrepreneur that's a small boots, like the entrepreneurs in e-commerce fuel, what you can do, what you're going to be able to do with a small team and some tech savvy and some vision. And it's going to be, and especially with interpersonal skills, I think those are going to be even more important. It's going to be phenomenal. I wonder I don't know if I'm 100% convinced that this is just going to lead to more opportunities in other places. I mean, it has in past revolutions, but the scope of what AI is replacing, like take the horse example for that you cited. I think the market is probably bigger for horses in terms of dollar volumes, right? Like you have $1 million horses.
Mm-hmm.
That $1 million Kentucky Derby horse probably replaces the value of, let's say 800 or 1,000 different horses from 100 years ago. So the market in dollar size is larger, but I almost guarantee you the number of people, especially per capita, if you like put it at pro rata based on the population, that are servicing horses today is much, is exponentially smaller than it was 100 years ago. So there definitely will be things, but I still think the jury is out on whether or not this is going to be something that the upside is going to benefit a wide breadth of people, as opposed to just you look at tech is the story of benefiting the best people in the industry disproportionately, right? Look at, the S&P 500, all the gains this year are from tech. All the gains are from AI. The rest of the market is flat, if not down a little bit. So I hope that's the case, but I think there might be some reasons that may not be.
I think it's only true if you don't adapt to the new environment. As an example, let's just use Google. 10 years ago, when Google comes out, how many industries were completely decimated as a result of it? I don't know if you remember. I had like 10 yellow pages sitting in some cabinet in my kitchen, 20 years ago. Now that's completely gone. The amount of things that we would have in terms of billboards, just the amount of industries that were completely decimated by Google. But if I were to tell my grandmother right now, there's a job called a search engine optimization specialist that makes $150,000 a year, her brain would break. And so the fact is that Google eliminated a complete industries, but then created complete industries. And so we would have never been able to even realize the amount of jobs that were created as a result of what got eliminated. And I think that we are just very much on the tip of what types of jobs are going to come as a result of AI.
I think you're right. And sorry, I got to push back just a little bit. I think you're right in your underlying premise. But if you look at one of the things I think that is unique to AI and its foundational layer of technology that it was not present back, say, when the Model T was released, is the ability to just capture gains in scale, right? Like, so you look at the Model T and horses go away, but now you have automobiles. Now you have tire shops. Now you have, mechanics. Now you have, new roads that need to be, because all these things that were not there before. And I think one of the things with technology, at least in the medium term, you're right, Google disrupted a lot of industries. But the nature of tech is that it gives rewards to the top people, both the top creators and also the owners of the platforms. I mean, the story of the last 3 years in e-commerce is, so many people listening will identify to this, that Google and Amazon have built these platforms where they've been able to capture so much demand and slowly has just turned the vice grips to extract more and more value out of merchants from it to have access to their visitors and customers. And it's a brilliant model. Like the original search model by Google for advertising, which I think was coined and originally created by Overture. It's super brilliant. It's so smart, but it also leads to a lot of gains for a fewer number of parties, which makes me wonder if AI, I think AI will definitely spawn good offshoots and new jobs we can't think of, but I think it will probably lead to more of a concentration of wealth among the people who are best able to harness it and best able to use it, as opposed to more broad distribution in past eras where disruption happened. So
I think we have to understand what is the game of capitalism. And that's the game that we've decided to play. And we have to understand the rules. And so in the games of capitalism, it's not about who came up with the idea that actually ends up winning the game of capitalism. It's not even about the person who ends up scaling the idea. Who actually ends up winning in the game of capitalism is actually based on ownership. Who actually owns the most amount of equity and is able to essentially ride that wave to take things to the next level. And so you're 100% true. And I think there's a lot of things broken with the game of capitalism. I think we disproportionately reward the early owner rather than everything that's required in order to get things at scale. But I also think that doesn't make it mutually exclusive, meaning that those new roles and new jobs also are created. And so I think you are right. And I think that it's also true that there are going to be more jobs. And so I do think that you're right. The spoils will go to the few, but I also think for those that are able to adapt to this new environment, they will also be able to take advantage of it. Now they'll take advantage of it in a way of, I'm going to get $150,000 a year job that didn't exist 10 years ago, not in the way I'm taking home $150 billion in equity ownership.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I think one of the things, there's a lot of talk. There's more talk about income inequality, and it is a real thing if you look at the statistics and the numbers. But I think it also, what is a real thing is if you look at humans are so bad at objectively saying, hey, we're better than we were off. Humans cannot be objectively happy. We have to be subjectively happy, right? It's just, I think it's one of the sad bugs in the human psyche that we're only happy in relation to how well everyone else is doing. And so if we are better off than we were 10 years ago, but everyone else is twice as well off, we feel less well off. And so that's an interesting kind of thing to think about. If you look at, in general, humanity has done exceptionally well over the last 50, 100 years. But if the people at the top are growing and taking more of the pie than the people at the bottom, but the people at the bottom are still growing, I don't think there's a good case there for, is that fair or not? But it's definitely going to lead to more unhappiness, unfortunately. Anyway, we could do a whole discussion on this, but I also want to talk. We talked a month ago or so, and I was trying to remember, was it Berlin? Is that the first time that we ended up meeting together, like 10 years ago or so?
I was actually thinking about it on the cab ride over here about the first time that you and I met. I don't know if you remember this, Andrew, but I remember you were launching Ecom Fuel. Like this was 2013. And you actually asked me, hey, I'm going to give you access to it if you're able to leave a testimonial. And I was like, oh, perfect. Let's do it. And what you did was actually brilliant. I don't know if you did this on purpose, but it was actually so smart. You're like, just buy it, and then I'm going to give you a refund once you do the testimonial. And I remember purchasing it. And then you sent me a Google form, and I filled out the Google form. And once I filled out the Google form, that's when you refunded me. And it was brilliant because so many people do the opposite. They go, hey, use this coupon code. You get access to it for free. And then I'm going to send you a Google form, and maybe I'll get to the testimonial. But it was brilliant because I put my dollars at stake as a result of purchasing it. And so I was waiting for this refund. And so if you're listening at home and you're looking for testimonials, do it the way Andrew did, because it was absolutely brilliant. It was completely genius. It's like, hey, go purchase it. I'll send you the Google form, and then my team will refund you. And I remember being like one of the first testimonials on Ecom Fuel's page. And I think that's how you and I got connected almost over 10 years ago.
This is crazy. Thank you for taking the leap and giving it a shot for some risky charlatan who may or may not have refunded your money. So that's wild to think. And at the time, obviously we're going to get into like AppSumo and the work you did there in a minute here, but remind me of what you were doing in the industry at the time.
So I had a very meandering path to entrepreneurship because I had started 2 companies in college, sold both of them. And one of my mentors at the time recommended, I'm like, look, Ayman, you can always go down the entrepreneurship route. You'll only have one opportunity to get a tier 1 job right out of college. And so your responsibility right out of college is to get the best name on your resume as possible. And so I went, interviewed at a bunch of places, ultimately was able to parlay that into a rotational position at Microsoft. And what Microsoft did is they have this rotational program where they call it kind of like the Marines of Microsoft, where you're able to do 6 months to a year in different parts of the company. And it just so happened that one of my rotations was in Munich, Germany. And while I was in Munich, Germany, I'm listening to the Dynamite Circle podcast, and they say, hey, we're throwing an event in Berlin. Completely serendipitously, I end up emailing them, and they're like, yeah, come on up. And so I was actually working at Microsoft at the time when I drove up to Berlin to end up going to this entrepreneurship conference, because I knew my path was always going to end up back in entrepreneurship.
And what were you doing for Microsoft at the time?
So
like in Berlin, because it sounded like you got to do a lot of different things.
Yeah. So this was basically a rotational program. It was super, I think it was one of the coolest things you could do right out of college, because what they do is they give you a chance to sample different parts of Microsoft. My very first rotation was actually at Xbox. My first day at work, they walk me into a closet with every game that Xbox had ever made, hand me a cardboard box, and they just start throwing games into this cardboard box. They hand me a brand new Xbox, and they're like, this is your homework, go play. And so I was like, this is amazing. This is what the
best job ever.
It was the best job ever. It was so fun. So I did that. I got a chance to work at Office 365. So it was basically Office subscription. So I'm learning about SaaS before SaaS was even a thing. And ultimately, my position was actually in Munich. So I was living in Munich at the time. Was an opportunity to work in Central and Eastern European headquarters. And so I'm going to Prague, I'm going to Kiev, I'm basically visiting all of Eastern Europe as an opportunity to work with some of the best and brightest individuals all over the world. I mean, I have individuals that went to the London School of Economics and INSEAD, like they are literally getting top tier education. They know like 6 languages. And I'm like, every day I felt, Andrew, like, I'm like, that's it. Today I'm getting fired. Like, I'm like, this is the day that they find out that there's no reason I'm supposed to be here. But sure enough, I made it the full 2 years, and then I got a chance to just explore and really got a chance to learn about what it takes to operate a tech company at that scale.
You think about Microsoft, they're a pretty impressive story. I mean, for a lot of different reasons, but the one that sticks out the most for me right now is there's not a lot of companies that have been around as long as they have that haven't been disrupted and stayed relevant. Like you think about musicians, right? The number of musicians that stick around and are able to do, most musicians and a lot of careers and paths will follow that, you have a climactic point and then you kind of slowly taper off for a long time. And I think that's hard for a lot of people, musicians or companies to deal with. And it's just the nature of the universe. But for Microsoft to come out with like Windows 3.1 and then Windows 95 and then dominate the market back in the 90s. And then here we are 2025 and they've managed to have, you know, the investment in OpenAI to be at the forefront of cloud computing, to be one of the top, you know, 5 biggest companies in the world, I think, is pretty remarkable. I don't know if I can think of many other companies that have had that long of a run in modern history as Microsoft. And I think they would have been very easy to discount as kind of old school, unable to change, not having a lot of vision. You know, when you compared them to Apple in the early 2000s, you know, they look like think about the old Apple ads, right? Like, you know, you had the young hip guy and the old guy in the suit. Anyway, it's a pretty remarkable story what they've been able to pull off over 40 plus years.
I think the biggest mistake that early entrepreneurs, founders in our space make is thinking that this is a game of years rather than decades. I mean, you're 100% right. I mean, do you know Apple was started in 1976. The iPhone came out in 2008. That's 31 years. 31 years before like the overnight success of the iPhone. And like, how many entrepreneurs in our space are willing to duke it out for 3 decades? Like, we're thinking about how do I have an exit in 3 years rather than 3 decades? And I think that the biggest mistake that founders in our space make is they're like, how do I get the next exit? How do I move on to the next company? How do I jump onto NFTs and then crypto and then AI? It's like, what's the latest technology? Rather than like, how do I build something for longevity? And I think longevity is a direct reflection of understanding who you serve, what problems am I solving? Because products have a timeline. Problems are timeless. And so like, what problems am I solving? Because those things will evolve over time. And then how am I creating solutions over time? It's funny, 2014, I'm at Microsoft, Andrew, and I was just finished my rotation. I'm wondering what to do next. I'm sort of floating around. I go to the bathroom, I go wash my hands, I come out and I accidentally bump into somebody. I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry. And he's like, oh, no worries. And I walk out. And as I walk out, it dawns on me. I'm like, that was Bill Gates. I just shoulder checked Bill Gates. And it was like, he was like the richest person in the world at the time. I was like, holy, like I couldn't believe it. And the very next day they announced the firing of Steve Ballmer. And ultimately the hiring of Satya Nadella, and you know, the rest is history. I mean, over the last 10 years, the meteoric rise of Microsoft stock under Satya's leadership it's a testament to how important the CEO is. But it's, to your point, the recognition of fresh blood, the recognition of needing to update the strategy, understand who you serve, and ultimately build a business that has incredible moats. The reason Microsoft has been able to last decades instead of years, despite all of this disruptions, is that Microsoft is no longer a product company. It's a distribution company. And I think that any great company understands this shift, whereas you use your first product to attract customers, and now the customers are actually the business model. And so when Microsoft launches a new product, they're able to immediately deliver it to their enterprise. There are millions of enterprise. They literally serve all of the Fortune 500s. And so it's no longer about Windows. It's about what can we deliver to the Fortune 500 customers that we have direct line of communication. They're using our laptops. With one click, we can have them using Microsoft. Go look up, I don't know if we can overlay this. Go look up the chart of Microsoft Teams compared to Slack. Slack was like this. Microsoft Teams launched like 5-10 years late and immediately overtook Slack. And what does that mean? It had nothing to do about Teams being a better product. It had to do with the distribution that Microsoft had as a result of having the direct line of communication with their customers. And so Microsoft is not a product business. It's a distribution one.
That's I never thought about it like that. And it's not distribution in the sense of, you know, fiber optics or warehouses, but it's in relationships, software installs, and the enterprise clients that they have, which traditionally takes so long to land. But once you do, they're going to be around for a while. That's super interesting. So, Ayman, how did you go? You're done at working at Microsoft. Also, shout out to Dan and Ian over the Tropical MBA.
That's right.
Those guys are the at least as far as I go, like the OGs in the online community space for, you know, maybe StomperNet. StomperNet was probably first, but I think they built something that was much more long lasting. And when I was starting eCommerce Fuel, I mean, I looked at what they were doing and was definitely inspired by what they did, and inspired a lot of what I did at eCommerce Fuel without, trying to rip them off. But huge kudos to those guys for what they've done. You're done with Microsoft. What was the path between that and becoming CEO of AppSumo?
So I'm at Microsoft, and I find myself wondering, what do I do next? I think, like, for many people that are just stuck in a job or stuck in a company where they're just not feeling like this is in alignment with the long term of their career. And I found myself just sitting there with the entrepreneurial bug, wondering what to do next. And Andrew, I was gonna make the leap. I actually ended up saving $50,000. And God bless my wife. She was willing to support me moving to Southeast Asia to make the 50,000 stretch as long as possible, to go and launch my own thing. But I recognized just deep in my soul, Andrew, that if that money was going to be burned, and I would have never been able to figure out how to launch the next business, because I didn't know one critical skill. I didn't know marketing. My last two companies both stalled out at the same revenue, because I think there's three things you need in order to create a 7-figure business: who you serve, what you sell, and how you sell to them. So I call it the persona, product, and promotion. I didn't know promotion. I really just didn't understand marketing. I didn't know how to sell things at scale. And so that week, I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to go and start my own company. I'm going to go work for a founder that I respect, that knows marketing, that I can learn from. So when I finally go and start my own business, I will know how to market that business. And it's funny, the day I made that decision, the very next day I got an email from Noah Kagan. He had blasted his list, and he's like, we're hiring a growth hacker for SumoMe. And this was a new SaaS that he had started at the time. And I'd been following Noah for almost 10 years at the time. And he was one of the best marketers in the world, someone I deeply respected. And I'm like, this is a sign from the universe. I'm going to go work for Noah. And it's funny because on the side, I was working for Charlie Hone, Tim Ferriss's right-hand man. And I knew he knew Noah. He introduced me to Noah, and the rest is history. I ended up just getting introduced to Noah, and we were able to jump on a call, and here we are.
Was that awkward asking Charlie for the intro to Noah, given you were working for Charlie and you're pretty much effectively saying, hey, hook me up with my next gig kind of thing?
I actually was working for Charlie for free. I think free work is one of the most underutilized. Like, I'm early on in my career. Free work is one of the most underutilized tools that you can use. And so find the people that you respect and go and work for them for free. So I was working for Charlie for free. And so no, it wasn't awkward at all. I mean, I'd been doing it for over a year. Charlie was wrapping up his book launch. And so he quite frankly, just didn't have a lot of projects that were going on. And so it was a very easy parlay. And the best thing about it is, because I was working for free, he basically emailed Noah saying, you need to hire this guy before I do. And so it was awesome. It was a great introduction. And, I'm sure Noah got hundreds of applicants to that position. But mine stood out because it came from an introduction.
Yeah. I always think it's interesting how people get upset there's definitely exploitative labor, of course, but when you're talking about, white collar technical work, and people voluntarily coming into work for it, we're not talking about child labor here. It always surprises me. People get so upset and bent out of shape about working for free for things. I would agree with you. I think some of the best things you can do is, and it's also an easy sell, right? Like if you come in, it shows you're hungry. It shows there's very little risk. When I've thought about pitches that have landed in my inbox from agencies, at least in the past, where I've taken a flyer on them, it's when they say, hey, I'd love to do this work for you for free, no obligation. If you like it after a month, great, we'll sign up. And if not, and it's not just I'm trying to get free work. It's just it speaks to the hunger and the commitment of who you're looking to hire. So,
yeah, there's a million ways for this to be exploitative, but if there is a proper and equal distribution, I'm learning from Charlie. Charlie's getting free work from me. It was completely equitable in both directions. And so I think for individuals that want to learn and have the capability, like I wasn't doing anything crazy, maybe half an hour to an hour a day, Monday through Thursday for Charlie. And that alone was more than he needed. And so I think if you can do that, and you could do that on the side, and, I'm young, I don't have a ton of responsibilities. I don't have a wife and kids at the time. I think for someone that's young, there is no greater way for you to leapfrog in your career than go and work for free for someone that you respect.
Yeah. So you're at AppSumo. You eventually work your way up to CEO. I'm curious, how did you take it from what was a fairly small company at the time to 140 employees to 80 million in revenue? What were the real big levers you pulled and changes you made to get there?
Yeah, Andrew, I'd love to say I immediately knew the second I jumped on a call, like, hey, I'm going to take this thing on the path to $100 million. We're going to have so much success, endless success. No, I mean, at the end of the day, I jumped on the call. I knew there was a lot of meat left on the bone. And I remember telling that to Noah, but phase one is survival. It's like, let's just keep the lights on. Let me just learn the job. And I think that oftentimes people are always thinking about, like, well, what next phase of growth? Like, let's just get the basics done. Let's just make sure that the basics are handled, that we know we're going to be able to keep the lights on, hit this month's revenue goals. And honestly, that was the game plan for the first year. Keep the lights on. Once I figured that out, then we're able to go and reflect and go, well, what's working, what's not? We call this T3B3, top three, bottom three. The things that were working, let's do more of those. The things that aren't working, let's eliminate. And I think that a lot of times founders, they just let the world come to them rather than spend time thinking about it. Like, there's a customer email that comes in from the customer that you hate, and you're like, oh shit, it's this annoying customer again. Well, what happens if you eliminate that customer? And then, oh, by the way, that customer that's been paying you for 3 years, that has literally emailed you only once, and every time you do jump on a call with them, you love them. Why are we ignoring that customer? And so, like, let's fire the one that's bothering us and constantly asking for features and is asking for discounts. And let's go and love on the customer that loves us. And if you're able to do this quarter over quarter, which is what's working, what's not, all of a sudden you can go from 3 to 4 million. And it's like, well, that worked. Oh, what's the next? Now we want to double down on the types of products. We're no longer going to do Udemy courses. We're going to do more software deals. Oh, what happened? Oh, now we go from 4 to 7. Oh, it's like, maybe we should hire a sales team. Now we're going from 7 to 14. And so it's this iterative process of figuring out, well, what is the next phase of growth? And it's really just like jumping into the gym, and you don't just go and throw 3 plates on the bench and lift it up and go like, let's go. It's like, how do I just add 5 pounds each time I step into the gym? And I think that oftentimes people they go into the gym and they see the guy squatting 6 plates and they go, how do I do that? It's like, that's impossible. It's like, I guarantee you that person was probably starting with a single plate and just kept showing up for multiple years, maybe even multiple decades.
One of my favorite quotes, I tell this to my kids a lot. I think they're probably sick of hearing it, is don't compare your beginning to someone else's middle and your middle to someone else's end. And it's so easy to do. I love the analogy of just rolling in and throwing 300 on the bench and going at it and getting crushed. That's great. So that was one thing, a very iterative process. What do you think going to tie in? You do a lot of CEO coaching, which we'll talk about here in just a couple of minutes. Where do you see CEOs really get caught up with this process? It sounds simple, right? Like, hey, just throw 5 pounds on every time. Once a week, bump it by 5 pounds. The business analogy, focus on something, be incremental. It's harder, easier said than done. Otherwise, everyone would have, wildly successful businesses. What do you see catching up and tripping up CEOs the most with this kind of approach?
I think it's important for us to first define what a CEO is versus a founder. I think that most CEOs are actually founders. And I think that we often use those terms interchangeably. And I think that the reason that most founders struggle growing their business is because they never graduate from founder to CEO. So what does a founder do? A founder creates something. They founded the company. And so they've been rewarded in life for creation and innovation and invention. And so what ends up happening when they hit 3 to 5 million, they go, well, if all I have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And so what do I need to do to get from 3 to 30? I need to invent more. I need to create more. And what they don't realize is the transition from founder to CEO is it's not about innovation, it's about optimization. That is where founders struggle, is they need to put down the paintbrush and pick up the clipboard. And it's difficult for many founders because now they have to learn how to hire, they have to learn how to run processes, they have to learn how to run checklists, they have to learn how to manage a team. They are no longer the star player hitting the game-winning shot. They are the coach that's sitting on the sideline drawing up the next play. And that's a very different skill set, Andrew, that I actually think a lot of founders, number one, don't enjoy. And I think that's totally fine. If they don't enjoy it, hire a GM, hire a president, have someone else being the one that's going to be hiring and managing and running the process and take things to the next level. But if you, as a founder, do want to learn these skills and do want to be the CEO that takes the company to the next level, then you're going to have to recognize this is no longer about product. This is about process and people.
Yeah. Where do you help founders? And I'm not sure if you focus with well, I think you do both, probably founders and CEOs, and sometimes it's the same, one and the same. One of the biggest, hardest things for a founder is making that leap to find someone who can run your company. I mean, the number of threads we have in ECF, I'm looking for a right-hand man or woman. Where do I find them? Pops up 6 months later. I tried hiring this person. It wasn't a good fit. Everything came off the rails. Now I'm back where I was 6 months ago. Take 2, take 3, take 4. When you get it, it's such a huge unlock. It's so hard to get right to find that person. Have you seen, how often do you see that go well versus just implode? And any tips on sourcing those people, vetting those people? I mean, you did it. Like you came in under Noah. It was he founded it. You came in, you optimized it. So, I mean, you're going to maybe asking you to look in the mirror a little bit here, but it's a big, hairy problem. A lot of people have trouble solving.
I think the number one reason that founders fail at hiring a CEO is because they actually don't understand what a CEO is. So there's actually only 5 responsibilities of a CEO, Andrew. Number 1 is the vision. Number 2 is the culture. Number 3 is hiring of the exec team. Number 4 is allocation of capital and resources. And number 5 is ensuring survivability. Those are the 5 responsibilities of a CEO. And most founders actually care about those 5 things. They actually deeply care about where the company's going, which is the vision. They care about the dream. They deeply care about how we operate, the vibe of the company. That's the culture. They want to be the final interviewer on the executive team. They actually want to look at the P&L and make sure that we're investing in the right things, whether it's marketing, product. And they always are monitoring cash flow and ensuring survivability. And so if you deeply care about those 5 things, the last thing you want to do is hire a CEO, because you're still the one that's actually the CEO. I was in a beautiful position because Noah had launched a new company, SumoMe. And so he was 100% focused on the new company, and which allowed me to be CEO. So for the individuals that are coming and constantly hiring a right-hand person, they have to clearly define, what exactly am I hiring for? And what they really actually want is probably something called a COO or a president. So the CEO is responsible for the future of the company. The COO or the president is responsible for this quarter. And so they are the one that's actually executing on the vision, executing on the game plan. And so it's much easier for you to clearly define the lines and go, I'm going to decide what success looks like. I just need you to go and execute on that. That is a much easier role to hire for than to hire for a very nebulous role of CEO, particularly when the founder is still deeply involved in the company.
Yeah. I think you're speaking from my own experience, and I think I am safe for others as well. Yeah, most founders love that kind of stuff. You'd have to try to like pry it away from them with they just would. That's the fun part, right? For a lot of people building businesses, it's not the operational part. So let me re-ask that question again. Instead of CEO, assuming your founder's going to keep that role, COO, finding a great CEO, same kind of questions. That same threads have popped up in our community over and over again. Finding that unicorn COO, someone who's super organized, who gets it, who can execute, who can manage people. Thoughts again there on where to find that type of person, especially how to vet them, how to find them. Are there any places kind of in corporate America they hang out really well? Can you hire from entrepreneurs, or is that a bad idea? Do you want someone who's kind of been in the corporate gig? Is that a better fit? Any thoughts there on hiring successfully?
Yeah. So I'm going to give you the story of someone at AppSumo. Her name is Alona. Alona joined as essentially a copywriter for us. And she joined as a copywriter, did a brilliant job, eventually ended up taking over email. So she kept asking for more. She's like, hey, I'm basically nailing the emails. I want to now learn a little bit more about Klaviyo. It's like, perfect. If you're going to learn about Klaviyo, you probably should hire a copywriter to take care of copywriting for her. This is the first time she's ever managed somebody. And so her and I work together on just, hey, how do we get to the point where you are no longer the one even writing copy? We have this new copywriter, Guruyan, who did a phenomenal job. And then the ultimate goal was eventually Guruyan took over for her for Klaviyo. And so then she could elevate, and now was thinking about marketing overall. And so now she's building out a video team. And then eventually she's like, you know what, Ayman, I no longer want to focus on just marketing. I want to focus on operations. So she transitioned to operations and then was thinking about customer support and thinking about hiring. And over the course of 4, 5, 6 years, she eventually made her way to COO of AppSumo. So she's been with AppSumo now 7, 8 years. She's still CEO today. She's still Noah's right-hand person, basically running half the company, maintaining the day-to-day, and is absolutely brilliant at what she does. And I think that what people don't realize is that when you look at most successful COOs and presidents, oftentimes they are homegrown. The problem that most founders have is they're impatient. They go, I would much rather hire an external COO that's seasoned, that understands how to manage people on day one. But as you've seen a million times in your forums, Andrew, what ends up happening? They hire a COO, they go 18 months, hire a COO, they fire him. Then 18 months later, they hire another COO, they fire him. Now you've gone 6 years where instead you could have been investing in probably world-class talent that probably already exists within your company. And if you take a look at probably the best employees at your company, they're probably the ones that have been around the longest. They deeply understand your culture. They have tons of knowledge. They're probably deeply aligned with the purpose of the company. And if you're able to invest in them and level them up over time, you're going to end up creating incredible individuals like Alona, who absolutely crushes it at AppSumo and has now hired essentially half the team. And so the highest likelihood of success is develop your own people. That's not, now if you don't have anyone that has that potential, and recognize this is going to be a 5-year process, and they're going to take over more and more of the COO role over time as they level up in titles. If you don't have that, then I do think you need to hire a recruiter, because I think recruiting in general, particularly executive level recruiting, is more than a full-time job. Most founders just don't have the Rolodex. They don't have the network. They don't even know what to look for. And so hiring a world-class recruiter that has hired for this position 100 times is going to incrementally and potentially exponentially increase your chance of success of hiring that position. But don't hire them full-time. Hire them as an advisor, as a V1. So bring them on a 10-hour-a-week basis to advise your existing team to get things to the next level. If they do a good job, then we'll ramp it up to a consultant role, maybe 20 hours per week. They don't even need to quit their existing job. And then we can, over time, ramp it up. And I've found the likelihood of your success of hiring executives in this capacity, where we increase hours over time, over the course of several months, if not quarters, exponentially increases your likelihood of success, rather than bring someone on full-time, onboarding them, and then realize they're not delivering the results 6 months later.
How do you hire part-time talent at an executive level? It seems like most of those people, let's take the COO role. Yeah. They're going to be very busy somewhere else. They're likely have an existing position. They're likely working 50 plus hours a week. So how do you get them for 10 and then 20 and then 25 over the course of 3 to 6 months?
It's honestly the easiest thing in the world. You'd be shocked at how open these high-level executives are to creating side income. Like almost all of these high-level executives, they have aspirations to eventually start their own thing, to become a consultant. You're going to get way more yeses than you are no's, particularly if you agree on a healthy hourly rate. And it doesn't need to start with 10 hours a week, because you're right. A lot of them, 50 hours a week, there's a lot on their plate. But you'd be shocked, Andrew, at how much you can get with 2 hours a month. Be like, look, we're just going to meet. We're going to meet every other week, and it's going to be me and my top director of operations, and you're just going to tell us what to work on, and then we're going to work on it, and then 2 weeks later we're going to improve, and then all of a sudden they're developing a relationship with you. They're developing a relationship with your top director of operations or whoever whoever would be reporting into them, they're going to start learning about your company. You're going to learn about them. It's almost like you're dating before you get married, because that's really what a full-time position is. It's marriage. It's like, hey, I want you to break up with whoever you're with and join me. And that's tough to do for a lot of executives, because you're right. A lot of A players are happily employed. They're getting paid really well. And they're, quite frankly, not even going to entertain jumping to a position with a startup that they don't know anything about. But would they be open to $400 an hour, $500 an hour, even $1,000 an hour twice a month? You bet 100%. They will 100% entertain that phone call.
Yeah. One thing that stood out about your story about the now AppSumo COO, I'm blanking on her name, Elena maybe, was that sounded like she was driving the process, right? Like she was coming to you, I want to do more, give me more on my plate. Like, how can I expand? Like that wasn't something where you were having to pull or push her along or promote her into the positions. It was very obvious she was hungry and going after it, which I think is a huge, a huge indicator that it was going to potentially work well.
Yeah. At every company, and I learned this from Cody Sanchez, she described it as unicorns and donkeys. At every company, there are unicorns and there are donkeys. And donkeys are amazing. They do the work. They're going to get their job done. But there's maybe 1 or 2 unicorns at your company that are going to go, I did my work. What else can I do? What else is on there? They're hungry for more. They want to do more. And it's actually a disservice to their career growth if you hold them back. And so your responsibility is actually figuring out, well, what role do you want 5 years from now? And it's okay if it's not at this company. Maybe you want to go start your own thing. It's your responsibility as a CEO to then craft their new role in a way where they can develop the skills to be ready for that next position. So in the beginning, Alona's like, I want to be CMO. So I'm like, okay, perfect. You need to learn more about the marketing world. So let's expand your position over time. And then as she started going up the market, she's actually like, you know what? I actually want to go down the COO role. And so I was like, perfect. Let's go move you to director of operations, then eventually VP of operations, then eventually COO. And so it's your responsibility to know what position, what career does your team want, and then craft their duties in a way where they're developing the skills. So that way, when they're finally presented with that opportunity, they absolutely crush it on day one.
Yeah. What were some of the big mistakes you made going from a very small team to 140 people with AppSumo? I mean, you don't do that without some collateral damage along the way. And people, in my opinion, I'm guessing you would agree, are the hardest part of business, full stop. So what were some of the hard lessons you had to learn to get better at that?
So I made them all. I think I vomited like 15 times on the way up to 80 million.
Literally vomited.
No, not literally.
I was going to say,
definitely felt like vomiting. Definitely a lot of sleepless nights. I've made every mistake on the book. That's why when I jump on a call with a CEO, I had a call this morning with one of my CEOs. He's like, Ayman, he was just complaining to me, and he's like, Ayman, like, is this normal? Like, am I supposed to? I'm like, dude, this is so normal. Like the way you feel, like this is like, it's always feeling like chewing glass. And so it's a very much a judgment-free zone when we're jumping on these coaching calls, because I've gone through it. I've made every mistake under the book. And so let's go sequentially. The earliest mistake that I made was that recruiter that I hired. She did a great job. We were hiring like crazy. And we got to the point where we basically staffed up our team, and we really didn't need to hire that much. And so I'm like, we really don't need a recruiter full-time anymore. And I was just looking at my roadmap. I'm like, honestly, it just felt strange to have her with no open roles. And so as part of our career discussion, as part of our quarterly review, I sort of just blurted out, I'm like, yeah, I kind of don't know if there's a position for you anymore. And she responded like, Ayman, are you firing me? And in my mind, I immediately I'm like, you know what? This would be a convenient time to just go, yeah, this position is eliminated. And I'm like, yeah, I think so. And like immediately I was like, why did I do that? Like, that was such a terrible thing for me to do. I regret it to this day. And I actually think that one of the things that a CEO should do is make sure that you never make it a surprise if you're letting somebody go. What I should have done and what I do now is I have a conversation where I let them know, hey, your next job is to look for a job. Here's what's happening. And obviously in a much nicer way, but it's like, I'm going to continue to pay for you. I'm going to continue to keep you on the team. I want you to go and look for the next position where you can be excited, because I don't see a position for you at the company now. And as if they're doing a great job. If they're not doing a great job, then you need to have the tough conversation of, this is the results. These are the standards that I expect. Here's where you're at. Over the next 3 months, I need this gap to close, or you no longer have a position. And so you have that tough conversation up front, and then maybe you're meeting monthly to make sure they're on track, because at the end of 3 months, it's not a surprise that they got fired. And so that was my mistake number one, was making a firing a surprise. And I never want that to happen again. And luckily, like, I've never laid anyone off since then. I've never surprise fired anyone since then. And so, so that's the first mistake. Number two, the second mistake was thinking core values are bullshit. And quite frankly, they are in the beginning. You hear this like mission, vision, value, like it's like, yeah, that's for like Microsoft. Like that's big company stuff. We don't really care about core values. But I didn't realize how important core values are until I ended up realizing, like, what is culture? It's like a buzzword we use all the time. I actually prefer the term vibe. What is the vibe of your company? And when you step into a gym, you immediately can feel the vibe of the gym. You actually need to clearly define what is the vibe of your gym. Are you a chalk and screaming and metal music gym? Or are you an Equinox, very clean, lemon eucalyptus towel gym? And when you dictate the type of vibe you want in your company, you actually attract a completely different type of clientele, both in terms of your customers and in terms of your employees. And it doesn't need to be anything crazy. But if you have clear, like at AppSumo, we decided we were hungry, humble, and weird. So hungry is we want people that are going above and beyond. We want people that are always wanting to learn. Humble is people that have a team first mentality. So even my sales team would help competitive salespeople close because we had a team first mentality. And then weird, we wanted people to be strange. We didn't want suits and button ups. We wanted people to be strange at AppSumo and probably, drop some F-bombs and curse. And we wanted a weird vibe. And so the buttoned up McKinsey consultant probably wouldn't thrive at AppSumo. Once we did that, Andrew, then it became easier for my hiring managers to look for hungry, humble, and weird. And so that was the second mistake that I made, was not clearly defining the core values so my team could hire people that fit the vibe of the company I was trying to create. And I actually ended up, we ended up realizing there was a couple people that just weren't matching that vibe, and we had to let them go as a result of that. And then the last mistake is thinking that been there, done that executives are going to come in and immediately save the company. And so would hire someone that had a great pedigree, had been working at these incredible high name startups, and immediately think they were going to come in and completely change the trajectory of the company. And unfortunately, that's not true. There's a long ramp up to learning the importance, learning what works at your company. And that's why I actually think it's much better to bring them on as advisors so they can learn those things on a cheap basis rather than bringing them on a $300,000, $400,000 salary. And they're essentially now learning on your dime and you're not getting the results for it. Let's instead bring them on $2,000 a month, a little bit over time, and then we can get the results, get the ROI, and essentially get to the point where they're paying for themselves over time. And so that was probably like the most costly mistake, was bringing on these very expensive executives and thinking they were going to immediately save the company.
The immediate question that popped into my mind when you just talked through that is, Ayman, are you more of the screaming, Slipknot, chalk everywhere kind of gym guy, or are you like the lemon eucalyptus guy? That's what I want to know.
Oh, that's Andrew, I think, aren't we all both? Doesn't everybody have a line straight through them where it's like, what vibe am I feeling like today? Is this a heavy squat day or is this a slow flow yoga day? And so I actually love, I have a workout routine where I work out every single day. And so depending on the day is depending on the vibe of the gym that I actually have multiple gym memberships as a direct result of needing to know what vibe am I going for on any particular day for the workout.
Interesting. Total rabbit trail. Working out every day, like 7 days a week?
Oh yeah, 1,000%, 7 days a week.
How do you do from a recovery perspective? Do you just you'll do like a, more isolated focus on different muscle parts and that gives it time to recover? Is that how you're able to do that and still get your recovery in?
Yeah. I number one, I think it's really important that CEOs specifically ignore all fitness advice. every fitness advice that you're getting from YouTubers, from magazines, from everything is individuals that are full-time fitness experts that are freak genetically and probably on TRT. And so completely ignore all of that, because your number one job as CEO is maintain energy for the business. And the last thing you want to do is squat heavy on a Monday and then try to show up to an all hands meeting just completely depleted. And so that's number one, is completely ignore all fitness advice because it doesn't work. So my actual day on Monday is my recovery day, my quote unquote recovery day. So this is the day that I will do yoga. This is the day I'll do sauna, cold plunge. I can mix it up. Maybe I'll do a long walk, because Monday tends to be my heaviest work day. And so it's, if you think about it, it's like almost like my workout versus my work day is like a double helix, where the heavier the work is, the lighter the workout. And then as my work week goes down, my workout increases in intensity. And so Monday is going to be my recovery day. Tuesday, we're going to ramp it up a little bit in terms of intensity. And so that's when I'll do a 20-minute, maybe 30-minute run. Wednesday is my first quote unquote workout, and that'll be upper body day because that doesn't take up a lot. And so that'll typically be anything that's just pure upper body. Then on Thursday, I'm going to be doing a VO2 max day. So this is when I'm be doing sprints, jump rope, anything that's going to spike your heart rate. So sprints, jump rope, assault bike, maybe you want to do CrossFit, whatever you want to do that's going to have high intensity, because it's the end of the workday, Andrew. Thursday, it's okay if you go super hard on Thursday, because you're probably going to be almost completely offline work-wise Friday anyway. And then Friday is typically like, I call it like the fun day. So like the show muscles. So like buys, tries, forearms, neck, like those are like fun actual workouts. And so like you're going to get your pump leading into the weekend. And then Saturday and Sunday is super light work days. I might not even work at all on the weekend. And so Saturday is when I'll actually do squats. That's like a heavy workout day for me. And so I'll spend an hour and a half in the gym getting all of my intensity, because by Monday I'm fully recovered. And then Sunday is typically when I'll do my long run. And so I'll either do like a 60-minute run, or I'll do a 3-hour hike. Sometimes it's usually with a friend. Maybe I'll go play pickleball. Like I'm doing a longer stretch, and then we'll go to brunch after. And so then by that, I'm ready for Monday again. And so it's completely different than everyone else, where I'm basically saving my heaviest day for the weekend when I'm not working. And I'm really only lifting heavy twice a week. And then Friday is more of a fun day. And I'm able to see progressive overload as a direct result of this workout plan.
I love it. Thank you for going so granular on that. I think it's routine, optimizing a good routine and working like health and fitness into that, both from a timing perspective, both from like an exercise and a load perspective. Man, it's something that takes a really long time to do well. I don't know how long it took you to get to that, you know, what seems to be working well for you.
20 years.
20, yeah.
Yeah.
20 years.
20 years of trying to figure it out. 20 years of trying to do like all of the fitness routines and trying to make it work with work. And, you know, I've been doing this routine now for several years now, and it has not changed. And what I like about it is it has flexibility within the structure. Mm-hmm. So like, I don't have to do a 20-minute run. I could go swim. I could go bike. I could go do different things as a result of that. My upper body workout could be completely different every single week. And so it creates variety within that structure. Sunday doesn't have to be a long run. It could be a bike ride. It could be a pickleball game. It could be a basketball. Like as long as it's about 60 minutes of elevated heart rate, that is going to check that box. And by the way, if I miss it, who cares? I'm going to see it again next Sunday.
Yeah, but love how you've got that baked in. I'm sure you know from time to time still tweak it, but to anyone listening who has kind of given up on that or has had a hard time getting into routine, it takes a long time to do, but it is worth continuing to iterate and kind of struggle through it. And if it doesn't work, tweaking it and figuring it out, because once you start to see it click in certain areas, it's such a wonderful productivity hack, just wellness hack, just feeling dialed in. And it takes time to get there. But I've been surprised, I guess is what I'm trying to say, surprised at how hard it is to get a good routine in place with that. And I've also been surprised that once you get something that works really well, how beneficial it is for your just day-to-day life in a week. It's a big unlock.
1,000%. I mean, we just finished the Olympics. Like the difference between gold and fourth place, not medaling, was like millimeters. And I guarantee you the individuals that really took it to the next level, that were able to honestly, anyone that made it to the Olympics period, they 100% have a strict routine that's been highly optimized and highly improved. And they probably had input from several advisors and mentors as a result of it. I remember hearing Keith Cunningham speak, and he mentioned that he got a chance to watch Tiger Woods practice. And, like amateurs like you and myself, when we're playing golf, we go and we grab a bucket of balls and we're just swinging wildly. It's like slice, slice. Oh, we hit the fairway, slice. And it's like, there's no rhyme and reason. Whereas Tiger, over the course of 1 hour, Andrew, only hit 6 balls. So about 1 ball every 10 minutes. So he would literally hit a ball. They had all of these cameras, literally as many cameras as I have here, hyper-analyzing each swing. They would walk over to a laptop with no less than 5 coaches, and they would all analyze this swing frame by frame in order to figure out and diagnose his swing. And at the time, Tiger was dealing with a really bad slice. He was in his comeback. And after about the 4th or 5th slice, his grip coach, and he had just the grip coach that was dedicated just to his grip, goes, I got it. And he went over to Tiger's grip, and he imperceptibly moved his thumb 1 millimeter closer to the center of the shaft. Tiger went up, took a swing right down the fairway. And I love this story because at the highest level, millimeters make millions. When you have $100 million business, a 1% improvement on your conversion is $1 million swing in the business, oftentimes directly to your bottom line. And so that directly impacts potentially hiring an entirely new executive team by one color change on your website. And so millimeters make millions. Number 2, even though your nose is 2 inches below your mouth, you need someone else to tell you your breath stinks. And so it's important for you to have outside counsel. It's really important for individuals that you trust and respect to tell you areas for you to improve. And these are people that are experts at where they're at. And I think it's really important for you to recognize just how important it is for you to hyperanalyze. And it's not just about practice makes perfect. It's about perfect practice makes perfect. Let's not just go out and swing 100 balls. Let's swing 6 and make each one incrementally better. Let's add 5 pounds on the bar each time we're showing up to the gym. Let's get incrementally better week over week.
Yeah, it's an amazing transition to talk about the coaching you're doing. You help, 7-figure CEOs become 8 and 9-figure CEOs while working less. Correct me if I butchered that, but that's the gist of it. Talk a little bit about who you work with, what you do, the value you bring, and who's a great fit, and the results people can expect to see.
Yeah, I think founders are actually the greatest resource in our economy and in our society. I think founders are they create jobs, they create incredible innovation, they create incredible customers. They bend the curve of their communities that they serve. Mm-hmm. And so to me, I think founders are some of the, communities like yourself, we mentioned Dan and Ian with Dynamite Circle, those communities, I owe so much gratitude to those individuals because you are creating the next wave of companies that are creating the jobs and creating this incredible value for our economy. And so when I get into coaching, to me, this is what I wish I had when I was CEO. It was really important for me to give back in a way where I wish someone would have told me how to properly fire somebody. I wish someone would have told me how to avoid some of the hiring mistakes. I wish someone would have told me how to professionalize the business sooner rather than later. I wish someone would have told me how lonely it's going to be as you transition from being friends with everyone on your leadership team to eventually needing to elevate yourself out of the business. And I always knew when I stepped down from AppSumo that I eventually, in some capacity, wanted to mentor the next generation of entrepreneurs. And so this was an opportunity for me to now, yes, find 7-figure founders that actually are interested in transitioning into a CEO position. They do want to learn the skills of no longer about product creation, but rather company creation. And so for me, being able to come in and help these companies, the last 4 clients, we just hit 4 record-setting months in a row. We're on track to double the business. We're currently in talks to have a 8-figure exit. I just went on multiple week vacation where I literally didn't check Slack once. Like, these results just get me so excited because I'm now giving the founders a job in a company that they're excited to work for. And because of that, it then trickles down to their exec team having an incredible leader and a company to work for, which means their employees have an incredible company to work for, which means all of them are going to have a direct impact on if there's an exit or if they end up running this business forever, having a company they love working for. And ultimately, the customers getting a much better result as a result of these companies operating at a much higher and an improved basis than when I'm able to step in. And so I love working with these founders. I see it as a peer relationship where I'm essentially their strategic and operational sparring partner, and I'm holding their pads and holding their mitts and helping them get better and essentially get ready for their Olympic Games, whatever that may be.
Yeah, and for someone who's thinking about, hey, this sounds kind of cool, what does that actually look like in practice? Are you meeting once a week, once a month? What is you're at, sure, it varies a little bit, but
yeah, there's definitely a lot of variation.
A fly on the wall for one of your calls, what would that look like?
So, I mean, it's kind of like a personal trainer, Andrew, where number one, we have to dictate what exactly are your goals. And so the most common scenario is we're meeting on a monthly basis, almost like a pseudo board meeting, where it's like what worked, what didn't, what needs to be improved, what's top of mind, what's keeping you up at night. And it's just like this monthly accountability / check-in, where it's like all of these issues that have been bubbling up over the last month, you have this pressure release valve where you and I will have an opportunity to discuss all of the trials and tribulations from the last month and then preview what the next 3 months to 3 years is going to look like. So you always have a touch point every single month to be able to get to your goals faster and stronger. That's probably the most common engagement, is this monthly touch point where we're able to debrief what's worked and then come up with a game plan for what the future is going to look like.
Got it. And you also have a newsletter as well. Talk just quickly about that and how people can sign up for that, and also how they can learn, where they can learn more about coaching.
So the framework that I use is actually called the 9 steps to 9 figures. I found there's a million ways to be successful, but there's 9 plateaus that prevent growth from most founders from getting to a $100 million business. And so this newsletter it's a monthly newsletter, walks you through the 9 steps to 9 figures and helps you unlock what is the one thing that's preventing growth to getting you to the next level. And so in the beginning, we're thinking about process, people, performance, and we're going deeper into that. What are the things that you need to install? And so it's this monthly newsletter that walks you through these things. In addition, if someone, is nodding along, listening at home, and they're like, I'm a 7-figure founder, I want to become a 9-figure CEO. Unfortunately, I'm not taking any clients right now, but I do have a waiting list. I don't go through the waiting list sequentially. I do find the most interesting opportunities on that waiting list. And so if you do reach out, feel free to apply to the waiting list. And then once a spot does open up, typically if a company exits or we end up hiring a CEO, that's typically when a spot will open up. I'll typically go and tap the waiting list and pick the most interesting opportunity.
Great. And where on the web can people find coaching, sign up for the list, and also the newsletter? What's the best website?
The easiest way is just search for me on X, Twitter. X.com/Ayman Al-Abdul, AYMANALABDUL. I need to get a better tagline, but that's probably the easiest one. I gotta buy the AAA domain.
I feel you, man. With a name like you, Darian, it's brutal.
That's right.
If you go with your last name, people ask a lot. So
that's right.
Ayman, so fun, man. It's a pleasure to catch up. It's so cool to see what you've done over the years, from meeting way back in the day over in Germany to what you've done with AppSumo, and of course the coaching you're doing now. So super inspiring, and I hope we can do this more often, man. I love, you're a fun guy to talk to. You've got a lot of knowledge, and just, deeply enjoy the conversation. So would look forward to doing it more, and also touring these gyms you're going to, man. I mean, like, I want to see both sides of Ayman and the different gyms here, between the hot yoga pants and the, Rage Against the Machine bench pressing, 500 pounds. I want to experience this firsthand.
Well, Andrew, I would absolutely love that. We definitely need to do this, hopefully in person next time. It's been awesome just seeing your meteoric rise over the last decade. I mean, I remember even just back then, as I mentioned the testimonial, I was like, this guy's a genius. I need to follow his career because this is absolutely phenomenal. And it it's been awesome just seeing the community that you've created with Ecom Fuel. I hear nothing but amazing things. I actually refer a lot of my clients to join. I literally, with that CEO I was mentioning earlier today, I was like, you need to join Ecom Fuel. And so he's like 100% signing up. So 100%, we definitely need to do this in person. Really looking forward to getting a workout in. This was absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah. Thank you, man. Appreciate the kind words and the referrals, and look forward to doing it next time. Thanks, man. Enjoy New York.
Oh, thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Yeah.